In a scientific world, does spirituality have a place?
Oh, absolutely, I think, because science and spirituality are asking very different questions. And science is about how things happen. Questions around spirituality are about meaning and purpose and getting to the why underneath the questions of how. And so I think, they necessarily come together in a way that often people don't understand because they work together.
Spirituality does have a place in a world that is full of reason and science, partly because spirituality answers different questions and it meets different needs in us. The scientific inquiry meets our need to know, but kind of paradoxically, the more we know, the more we realise we don't know. And it's at those edges, which are kind of ever broadening, that we have questions about what does this mean? What's the purpose of this? How can we use this for good and make the world a better place? And so the more we know kind of scientifically, or the more our reason tells us, the more there is for spirituality to explore, because it opens up areas that are completely different, that require different answers and different responses.
Some people will say there's a friction between science and a belief structure. I know many scientists who have a belief. For me, it might be Christian in my circles. It could be another belief. And they say that that friction isn't there, that that belief helps them to put some order into that structure.
One of the ways that I've actually noticed that this is true in my own life was through my own scientific studies. I did a science degree when I first left school, and I have really vivid memories of my horizons being opened up because of my scientific study. One example was looking through a telescope and seeing the rings around Saturn with my own eyes, and the wonder that I felt that this thing that I'd seen in a book I saw with my own eyes. And it wasn't just an intellectual response, it was actually kind of something visceral that said, wow, this stuff is out there. I wonder what else is out there. What is the response I should be making to this? And so my own studies in science actually deepened and opened my spiritual life as well.
Of course it does. I don't see them being opposite. I actually think they work together. So my husband's a scientist.
So many scientists actually are believers in spirituality. I mean, so many of the original discoveries were by clergy, because clergy had the learning, they could read and write and do arithmetic, and they also had the money that they could use to do their experiments. So people like Copernicus. Newton wasn't a clergyman, but he trained to be a clergyman.
It's good to know that about Newton. But what I've really been wondering is what the World Health Organization, or as we sometimes call it, the WHO, thinks about all this. If only there was some way to know.
The World Health Organization says that your spirituality is what gives your life meaning. So that could be different for everybody. And for a lot of people that involves religion, and for a lot of people it involves the beach, or it involves sport, or it involves their family. But it's the thing that gives your life meaning.
I would definitely say yes, and I would even say that science is its own form of spirituality. Because science is a way of engaging the world with desire, with passion, and with the pursuit of meaning. And that's one very basic way to talk about what spirituality is. So you can see this, the sort of science of spirituality, a sort of popular science of spirituality in figures like Neil deGrasse Tyson or Brian Cox, the physicist. And they put out these TV programs, and they have a big presence on the internet. And I would say that they themselves combine spirituality and science. For them, science is a way of opening up the wonder of existence, and the pursuit of science is a way to make the human spirit come alive. So in that sense, spirituality and science, not only are they not opposed, they're actually very much intertwined. That said, I think spirituality also is about opening up ways of engaging with life, engaging with existence that go beyond what science can do or what science takes as its object. So for instance, I don't think science can tell you how to write a novel. Science can't tell you how to open yourself up to love. Science can't tell you how to grieve. And these very basic human questions are about spirituality and open up spiritual questions in ways that push beyond or go beyond where science can go.
So a consensus is forming here that spirituality might just have a place, I guess. But some of us might not be happy with that. For some of us, spirituality might have come to stand for some things we would prefer to reject in our everyday lives. This semi-vague thing we are circling around and calling spirituality, can it be rejected?
I think the idea that somehow we can escape from spirituality, I don't think we can. You know, spirituality is describing something that people experience. We can't get away from those experiences. I think people can make conscious decisions to somehow think they will forget about spirituality or not talk about it, but it's still operating in their lives. They're still having those experiences. Thousands of years of human history, tens of thousands of years, have said that people have this aspect to who they are. We describe it in lots of different ways. We can't ignore it. We can't get away from it. It is part of who we are.
Thanks for that definitive answer to a question I just posed. Spirituality and science certainly seem to be more intertwined than I'd been thinking, right? Or maybe at least kind of adjacent?
If it's about meaning and it's about purpose and it's about why we do the things we do, if it's about how we care for one another and what we decide is good and what we value, then science informs that and is part of that, and that directs the questions we ask of science too. For me, when you think about spirituality, we're not talking about make-believe, we're talking about what's true and what we are discerning in ourselves that is true and important, and that's the work of science too. Two different methods, one truth.
I believe that the spiritual side of things and the scientific side of things are actually two different approaches to the same fundamental truths. You can look at a mountain range, and as a scientist you can say, oh, I understand they were formed by two plates of the earth smashing together and pushing the rocks up. I can say that. On the other hand, you can look at them and say, but can you see the beauty? The science doesn't explain the beauty, and why should we perceive that as being beautiful? There's no scientific rationale behind perceiving a landscape as beautiful, but we do. And that's why I think they're both sort of like coming at it from slightly different angles, but they're both searches for the same truth.
Oh, absolutely has a place. I mean, without spirituality, without a sense that there is more to this world than the material world, what's the point? There is something beyond us that gives life meaning.
I think in a scientific world, spirituality is even more important because, again, science is all about proof and things being able to be tested. Somebody comes up with a theory and it's tested and then it's tested again, and it becomes fact when you can apply those tests over and over and still have the same result, and it then becomes predictable. Spirituality fills in the gaps of all of those other things which aren't predictable, and we have no idea what that's all about. It's all of those sliding doors moments of things that change in our lives, on a dime. It suddenly spins, and the things that we can't explain and we can't predict. And it's the thing that makes life a bit more exciting.
Thanks everyone there. You've got me thinking. I certainly want to think that spirituality has a place, because it seems so fundamental to so much human experience for thousands of years. I get that. For me, I find myself being a bit resistant to the kind of anti-science thinking that some spiritualities sometimes seem to involve. Not all of them, but some. But I liked how our previous Innovivid experts instead drew so many links between science and spirituality rather than set them up as kind of opposites. Maybe they are intertwined. Maybe. Okay, what do you think? Does spirituality have a place? In a way, we're still kind of defining the word spirituality, so that makes that more challenging to answer. But in the territory that spirituality seems to inhabit, in our humanness, in our capacity for awe and wonder and connection, I think that I want to make sure there's the possibility that spirituality does have a place, even if I'm not super defined on what it is. What do you think?